Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Rainbow Investing, where we examine a spectrum of ideas to increase your long-term wealth. Now, tonight, yes, we are talking about precious metals in depth. Gold, silver, platinum, palladium, and rhodium. Now, I have done a video about this before, so if you haven't seen that already, check that out. This is a more in-depth video, but I think it's really important to do a video like this because of the current economic climate. We're approaching the end of the cycle. You'll probably hear a lot more about gold and silver in particular and then in the coming months and years, because I guarantee that when things start to go pear-shaped in the stock market, people turn to precious metals. This has been proven time and time again throughout history. Precious metals are the ultimate store of wealth. So just before we get started, if you haven't already, click that subscribe button, click the like button. It really helps me out being a small YouTube channel, but let's get right into it. So, the name itself, I want to talk about that for a sec. Precious metals. Why are these metals called precious? And just to be clear, we are talking about gold, silver, platinum, palladium, and rhodium. These five metals are the most commonly known metals referred to as precious. Some people might lump other metals in there, but these five are the classic precious metals. So why are they called precious metals? Well, these investments have a very, very unique characteristic. They are finite resources. Okay, if you buy shares in a company, if you buy bonds, if you buy property, they're not really finite. You can always buy more shares, you can always buy more property. Companies can create shares out of nothing. There's more than enough land to go around, and governments keep issuing bonds every single year. But there is a finite amount of gold, finite amount of platinum in the world. Humans have been trying to create gold from nothing since the Middle Ages, and so far we have not succeeded. And I don't think this will change. These metals are finite, hence why they are precious. The other component to think about is they're actually just beautiful. These metals just appeal to humans. It's in our nature to love gold. If you haven't seen gold before, you might not know what I'm talking about, but as soon as you lay eyes on real gold, you will understand why people love gold, why people love silver. They are just items of intrinsic natural beauty. So in my previous video on precious metals, I did talk quite a bit about gold and silver, but I didn't really talk about these other metals, platinum, palladium, and rhodium, because they are more obscure than gold and silver. Gold and silver are quite commonly known. Probably you've heard of platinum, but it's probably because you've seen a platinum credit card or something else marketed as platinum. But platinum is a very, very rare and beautiful metal. It is actually quite a lot rarer than gold. If you took all the platinum that's ever been mined in the history of Earth and put it in a swimming pool, an Olympic swimming pool, it wouldn't even cover your ankles. That's how rare platinum is. And palladium and rhodium are even rarer than that. They are very, very, very rare metals. So, platinum, palladium, rhodium are sometimes called the white metals because they have a very, very white color, even more pale than silver. And they have actually not historically been used as investments or stores of value. There's actually stories of Spanish miners mining for gold in South America, coming across platinum and just throwing it away because they thought it was fool's gold or fool's silver. But these days, platinum has been known to fetch a higher price than gold, although not at the moment. But palladium as well, at the moment, is a lot more expensive than gold, and rhodium is more expensive than all of the others put together. It is a very, very rare metal. So these three white metals all have what's called industrial purposes. Silver actually has industrial purposes as well. The primary use of these three metals is in industry. So platinum and palladium are commonly used in catalytic converters in cars. So every single car that you buy will have pieces of platinum or palladium in the muffler, in the catalytic converter. That helps take pollution out of the car exhaust. These were not used until about 20 years ago, but now because of stricter laws, every single vehicle has to have one of these two metals in it. Now, all four of the white and silver metals actually have far more industrial uses than gold. Only about 10% of gold is actually used for industrial purposes. So that's in the manufacture of machinery, dentistry, other things like that, electronics. But these other metals, it's far, far less. I know silver's about 50% industrial demand, 50% investment demand, and it's even lower for platinum, palladium, and rhodium. But these metals have gained popularity as a store of value in recent years because they are very, very rare, and people just assume that there will always be a market for these metals. One, because they are beautiful, two, because they are rare, and three, because they are useful. So they have come to be known as precious metals in addition to gold and silver. Now, rhodium is the most obscure. Rhodium doesn't have a lot of commercial use, industrial use, and it is very, very, very expensive. It's also not a very practical metal. Rhodium is very prone to cracking or breaking. You can't mold it the way you can mold the others. So that's a slightly more obscure metal. It's quite hard to find people who are investing in rhodium, but they are out there, so I thought I'd include them. Okay, so let's get into the reasons why gold and silver might make good investments. Now, the first thing to note is that gold and silver are what's known as real money. They have been used as money for thousands and thousands of years because of their intrinsic beauty. People want them, and therefore people can use them as a medium of exchange. Now, this is actually very much the case up until 1971, when the US government took themselves off the gold standard. So before that, each dollar note that you got was actually a promise that you could take to the bank and get a certain amount of gold for it back. So the US dollar was actually worth something. The notes were actually worth a physical item of value. Ever since 1971, when they took themselves off this, the US dollar is basically worth what other people think it's worth, or what the government tells you it's worth. But it no longer has an intrinsic value, something valuable underpinning it. And many people think this was a mistake, decoupling the US dollar from gold, because people like the idea that currency can be tied back to something with intrinsic value. It also meant that the government couldn't print more money whenever it wanted, because you can't print gold. So if you wanted to print money, you had to go and get more gold. Nowadays, the government can print whatever they want because it's not tied to anything of value. And people think that because there's still such a high demand for gold, and gold demand keeps on rising every year, the price of gold keeps on going up every year, proves that it is still real money. Even though it doesn't have a wide range of actual uses, people still want it. Therefore, people still consider it real money. Same with silver. Like I said earlier, 50% of silver is actually industrial demand, but 50% of it is people wanting it just because it is silver. Therefore, you can consider gold and silver real money. I'm not sure anyone can imagine a world in which no one wanted gold, in which the price of 1 ounce of gold would be $10. It just wouldn't happen. At this time, 1 ounce, so that's 30 grams of gold, is worth about 1,300 US dollars. And that's probably the size of $2 coins. So that's how much gold is worth. It's not very much, and it is really, really expensive. Another reason why people love precious metals is they consider them an inflation hedge. Now, I've done a lot of videos about inflation, but in a nutshell, inflation is basically the real decline in value of a currency. So this happens every year. Every year, everyone's currency is worth less and less. Now, people like gold and silver because they are assumed to hold their value. So if inflation is rising by 100%, so that means that one loaf of bread might cost you $5, but the next year it'll cost you $10, people are assuming that gold will keep its value. So if gold costs $1,000 in year one, it will cost $2,000 in year two. It will rise with inflation. Therefore, people like to have gold in periods of high inflation because they know it will hold its value. Same with silver, and same with the other precious metals. Because people will want them, no matter what, people will always be willing to pay what it's actually worth. And so in a way, it's inflation proof. Now, many people have gold and silver as part of their investment portfolios for the sole purpose of protecting against inflation. Because often other forms of investment won't hold up as well in high inflation environments. That's why people like precious metals. Another reason people like precious metals is a possible return to the gold standard. So a lot of people think the way that the governments are printing money at the moment is unsustainable. And if you look at a graph of the total amount of US dollars in the world and what's happened in the last 10 years, you might actually think they have a point, because the amount has just increased exponentially. And no one really knows if that's going to work out in the end. So many people think that if somehow things collapse and the US dollar has huge problems, we may go back to the gold standard, so having the dollar backed by gold. And because there are so many more dollars than there used to be, investors assume that in a return to the gold standard, an ounce of gold, instead of being worth 1,300 US dollars, might be worth 10,000 US dollars. So they hoard gold in case of this happening. And that's the final reason why people like precious metals, is as insurance. If something goes wrong with the global economy, gold is always going to be there, whereas the stock of Apple or Microsoft may not be there. Gold is a physical asset, and you can't destroy it when the stock market collapses, like you can with property value, bonds, or shares. Anyone who lost money in 2008 will tell you that you can lose money very, very quickly in a market crash, but not with gold. The gold's not going anywhere, and it certainly won't lose value in times of share market turmoil or economic collapse. And that's mainly the reason why people hold precious metals. So of course the most popular one is gold, followed by silver. But a lot of people hold the others as well because these metals have different characteristics to gold. Because they are used in economic activity, in industry, their prices don't move in the same way that gold does. So a lot of people like to have a bit of diversity when it comes to precious metals and not just own gold, because gold will often go down in times of economic booms, whereas the others will normally rise because demand for them will rise. Alright guys, so let's talk about ways you can actually buy precious metals, or how people do buy precious metals. So the first one is probably something you'd all be familiar with from watching movies and such, and it is owning bullion. So that is gold bars or silver bars or coins or any other form of the physical metal itself. Now this has a few problems, as you can probably imagine. Most of these metals are extremely heavy. So having bars of silver delivered to your house is actually quite problematic because there are large shipping costs involved, etc. You can probably imagine. Storing them's a bit of a pain. And also having, say, a 1 kilo bar of gold, that's worth about $60,000. So having that in your house, you'll have to lock it in a safe or keep it really, really safe in some other way. And that, of course, is a problem for a lot of investors. So another way you can invest in actual physical gold is to buy the gold, but a lot of companies will hold it for you. Or you could pay a bank to hold it in a bank vault. This is quite common. I think the average bank vault costs about $100 a year. You can have it in a safe deposit box in the basement of a bank. It's pretty safe there. Probably the most popular way of holding gold and other precious metals is actually through ETFs. So I've talked a lot about ETFs before on my channel. So basically, if you buy, say, shares in a gold ETF, you'll own shares in a trust which owns gold. Now the ETF, as more people put money into the ETF, they will buy more gold. And if the price of gold rises, your shares of the ETF will go up in value as well. Now there are many ETFs that cover precious metals. I know in Australia there's a gold ETF. There's a silver ETF as well. There's actually a platinum ETF and a palladium ETF. So if you want exposure to these metals, you can actually just buy shares in these ETFs. And the ETFs will actually hold the metal for you. And it's a pretty inexpensive way to get exposure to these metals. I don't know of any rhodium ETFs yet, but I'm sure if you really want to find some, they're out there. Maybe in other countries. I'm pretty sure there's not one in Australia. But if there's any rhodium bugs out there, keep looking. I'm sure you'll find it. The last way I want to talk about exposure to precious metals is through actually buying shares in companies that mine these metals. Because of course these companies are constantly digging these metals out of the ground and selling them. So if the price of gold goes up, the price of any company that mines gold will also go up, often quite a lot more. Same with silver, same with platinum, same with these other metals. Companies that mine precious metals are another way of gaining exposure to the price movements of the metals, because they are literally digging them out of the ground and selling them. Alright guys, that pretty much wraps up what I have to say about precious metals. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you made it to the end, congratulations. Maybe hit the like button because I really enjoyed making this video. But thank you so much for watching. I'll be back with some more videos soon. But for now, good night.